everybody, my name is Juliet. I'm a veterinarian from Belgium, but I was born in a small town in the Flemish part of Belgium in the north. And I grew up in a normal family in a house with a small garden. The small garden I remember because since I was a little girl I loved to chase insects, I loved to chase birds in the garden. The only little thing was that I was never allowed to have a pet. Even although every time they asked me, Juliet, what do you want as a present for Christmas, or what do you want for your birthday? I always said, I want a furry little pet, I want a dog, I want a cat and everything like that. Until one day, I remember I got really good marks at school, very good marks. And so the question came again, Juliet, what do you want for your good marks? Although I find it a bit silly now, but I asked for them like, I want an animal. And so my parents decided to give me a parrot. So a little parrot, and I named him Coco. Coco was my best friend because I was alone and I spent hours with that little bird to make him jump, to make him turn around his little stick. I even learned him to call my name, even if it was not Juliet, but he said Juliet. I was already very happy with that. He even came out of the cage sitting on my hair and everything like this. All went good until that moment. That was the first big hard moment in my life. I remember my parents, they didn't get along, so one day they got divorced. I chose to go to my mom, to live with my mom. And my mom was not allowed to have pets in her house, in the flat we rented. So Coco had to stay with my father. And actually I discovered months later that Coco died. And that was a very heartbreaking moment. From that moment on, I promised myself that I would always take care of animals, and I would even tell anybody around me that they have to take care of any animal pet friend that they would have, because animals, they don't decide to come to live with us. We take them in and we decide they have to stay with us. At that time I started to take care of any injured animal that crossed my path. Even if I didn't know how to do it, I tried to learn. I asked people around, how do we do? What do we do with a pigeon? What does a pigeon eat and everything like that. When I was about to get 18 years old, my mom got the opportunity to move into a bigger house. And when we moved into that bigger house, she promised me a dog. She said like, no, it's time that we get a little dog, so you can have what you always dreamed of. And we bought Brule. Brule is was a little Bernese dog, and he became my furry soul. Brule was the dog I cried for hours in his fur. I just snuggled up with him. I think I told him everything. And then I got 18. Everybody asked me, what do you want to study? I want to become a veterinarian. And I went to study in the south part of Belgium. So I went to Liège and I spent six great years. They just confirmed that it was my choice to take care of animals. And I even met Jean-François, we call him Jeff, who became my husband, but is also my best buddy. During my work experience, also in my last year, I met another very interesting veterinarian, Marcel. Marcel learned me that rare diseases are rare. And at that moment I learned that I didn't have to look to the details, I had to see the big picture. He learned me to be very, very observative, what would later help me a lot, and even knowing what I'm doing. After my studies, I spent 3 years working for 3 big animal cattle vets. It was a nice experience because they asked me to develop their small animal practice, and I did. But it was hard because At that moment I realized that I became a big kibble selling vet. But I felt that something was wrong, like why would I sell all those medicine, all those kibble? So at one point I decided that I wanted to search another way. I searched around and I remembered the vet Yves that I followed since I was 14 years old in my hometown. He was specialized in acupuncture, and two of his consults really marked me. One was that a poodle came in limping, an old poodle, like 11 years old, limping, came on. We had to put him on the table, and he poked in those needles, like, you know, what is he doing? He put them in some needles, and like 20 minutes after, the poodle jumped off the table and ran out, wagging his tail, out of the consult room. Wow. And another thing was, there was that bulldog. He could not stand still, nothing. My job was to feed that bulldog with snacks, to keep him busy. Because he had to stand still, because he had his acupuncture session for skin problems. Those things, they trotted in my head, and I decided to call Emil van den Bosch. And Emil van den Bosch is the pioneer of acupuncture, of Chinese medicine in Europe. And knowing Emil, he was very cash to me, and he said, like, Juliet, if you don't have any experience, you have to start with the good basics. You have to learn it with the humans. And so I started studying Chinese medicine with other doctors, human doctors, osteopaths, and there was no other vet. I was the only vet. During those years I worked for the 3 cattle vets. I realized all of this, but I also was kind of exploited. We always had that dream with my husband to go on a trip around the world to encounter the endangered animals in their natural habitat, as we were both passionate by nature and animals. And one day, Jeff, my husband, came back from his work. He told me, Juliet, if you don't leave now, we will never leave. And we were 25 years old. He took the world map and he pointed with his finger and said, we're gonna drive until Australia. I was dreaming about it, I was talking about it, but I didn't have the guts to leave. But he had the guts, and he poured us, both of us, in the travel. We traveled through 36 countries, 4 continents, I think 1,175 days if you want to put days on it. We discovered wildlife in every country, from the small little frog to the big elephant. I had the chance to work with wildlife experts, with traditional healers. I worked in the desert, I worked in the bush in Aboriginal land. Those people, they shared me everything they knew. They shared me how to use what is growing in your backyard. And if you're in Australia or if you're in Asia, at the end, it was all about prevention and using what we have and to take care of your ecosystem. Because if we would take care of the ecosystem, if we would leave nature more or less normal, the animal would survive anyway. We had experience that I was, for example, in Jakarta with caddy horses, with horses that had to work for the people carrying tourists day in, day out. The horse has to perform. It's not a living thing, it's a machine. And when the horse would not go anymore, we just leave him on the side of the road dying. And I remember that horse that I had nothing. I had a few mats on the field and I made a drip with that, and the animal stood up, and the animal lived for like more than then 5 years after in a nice refuge. For me and my husband Jeff, those nearly 4 years on the road made us realize that our European way of living was not the only way of living our biggest university of life, even more important than our studies. It made us realize that we wanted to spend time as a family. We wanted to spend time with our children. We wanted to find a balance in between work and family because it made us also better, it made us healthier. I traveled pregnant, and even there I realized that being pregnant, it's not a disease, it's just normal. Those 3 years and a little bit, when we came back home, we found Eli not recognizing us, and it was quite shocking. We went sleeping, and the day after, he looked at us, he jumped around, I will never forget that moment. He recognized us. 3 years later, he was so happy to see us. The only exception was that he was obese. He put on so much weight, and all his canines were filed. And that made me realize, like, whoa, I have a mission, you know. We cannot just have a dog and have a dog because it's a beautiful dog. We have to take care of them. On Eli, I tried all the diets, all kind of diets. I tried everything, from raw to kibble to special kibble to grain-free to anything. He was our guinea pig. It is amazing. I did everything on him. And now Eli is a 13-year-old dog. He's a happy bugger. He's running around, jumping on the stand like if he was only 8 years old. And it's amazing because he always had masses on his belly from when he was 5 years old, and I didn't know what it was until we analyzed actually what it was, and it was cancer. But he let me treat him naturally, and now he has no masses on his belly anymore. He was my master with all the other masters I had, because when we came back from the trip around the world, I started immediately, it was sure, I felt that urge to finish my acupuncture, Chinese medicine studies, and I became an IVA certified acupuncturist. I never stopped forming myself, so I learned about Chinese herbs, I learned about Western herbs, I did homeopathy, I researched a lot on food and health and the link between our microbiome and our health. And I realized that on top of everything I learned on homeopathy, Chinese herbs, acupuncture, food was such an important thing to make an animal better. The birth of my 3 kids also helped through that, because I had to feed them. I had to learn how to feed them, and they're little animals. And in that philosophy of life, it's not only just poking needles in an animal, it's not just acupuncture, it's a whole way of thinking. We started our permaculture garden in Belgium. And our permaculture garden in Belgium is very important for us because it's a philosophy of life. It's a simple life to prevent disease. It even helped me to heal myself, because I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease when I was 26 years old. But now, through diet, through a lot of research, through a lot of research on myself, trying on myself, I got completely wind off the meds, and here I am. I don't have any Hashimoto disease anymore. My medicine involved that I learned to use whatever was available, whatever was good for the animal and the owner at the moment and the place I was. I went to have work experiences in Brazil with Carolina Haddad. I have 2 of my great masters back home, Albert and Dolores. Even one day Albert and Dolores called me and they say, Juliet, we want to ask you if you want to write the food therapy course for the vets we train, because since 4 years I train veterinarians in acupuncture. I learn them, I guide them to also master this traditional medicine. And those vets, whenever they formed in acupuncture, you don't stop with just acupuncture. Now I offer them the food therapy course to even help their patients better. The hard moment was too, like, we had a permaculture garden starting, we were living in balance with a less polluted environment for my disease, for my health and everything like that. And one day my husband got a proposition to come to Chennai, to come to India. And I didn't want to come, I really didn't want to come because I felt good back home. But I followed him and the whole family followed him. And I said, like, yeah, why? Maybe it's not a hazard. It's India. India is such a big country. It's actually an amazing country because it's a country where I took the positive things of the country. I learned about Ayurveda. I said, like, I have to learn their traditional medicine because they have one of the oldest systems in the world. So I learned about Siddha, I learned about Ayurveda. I'm still studying ethno-veterinary practices, and I implement it in my work, my daily work with the clients here in Chennai. And I realized, being in India, that culture has such a big impact on the relation between the animal and the owner. It's amazing. I've never seen so many aggressive dogs. That's why I want to bring and advise people about what I learned through all those years and through all those countries. I want to just help people to have a better life with their pet, a happy life with their pet. And India is not just the end or the beginning, it's actually, I think, it's my story that continues. Because I think I don't belong to one country, I belong a little bit to the world. Through my whole life, I have learned from so many different powerful people, veterinarians and wildlife caretakers in the world. I've seen so many different medicines, so many different ways of healing. 90% of all those medicine is about the same. It's about giving a quality of life to an animal. It's about it's unique to any animal, and it's kind of a game. It's a play for me to make a puzzle out of that and to provide the best for the animal and the owner. And it's such a rich experience. I only wish that I can share it with as many people possible, because it's something that I want to give for the next generation. Just people know where you are now, know what you have, use it, and just keep it for our next generation.